Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast, brought to you by Rocket Agency. I'm your host, James Lawrence. Welcome back to the Smarter Marketer podcast. I'm here today with Katy Richardson. Katy, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So Katy is Global Head of Marketing at student living app Housr. Previously, she was the B2C Marketing Director ANZ at student discount platform Unidays, and she has over 12 years of creative experience and marketing experience, both in Australia and the UK, marketing to young audiences. We were chatting before recording and we did a pod, it's actually over 2 years ago now, which feels like only yesterday. And it was one of the better received pods we did. I think it was 2023 now. So I thought it'd be great to have you back, Katy, and to talk all about marketing to younger audiences, and if for listeners where that's an important cohort for them. I think this is obviously a topic of lots of interest, but I think, just to get into it, how is it life back in the UK now? Katy used to work at Unidays out here, and she's 2 years to the day she says she's been back. So how's life back in the UK? Yeah, it's very fast 2 days.
Yeah, no, really enjoying it. Thanks. It does feel like we chatted just the other day, but really enjoying it. Obviously, there are some challenges and opportunities with working in a global role. At the moment, we work across the UK and the US, but I'm really enjoying that challenge. I've got an awesome team behind me. And again, working in the student space with Gen Z is my bread and butter. So really enjoying it on that front.
It's good. So crossing time zone, meaning you get no sleep, but apart from that.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm an early bird, so it's probably easier to talk to Australia because it's of this overlap, whereas the US come online sort of our afternoon. So, but yeah, everyone's super flexible and it's a great team. So
it's challenging. With the current role, who are the kind of the target audience in terms of ages and demographic?
Yeah, so it is. We market completely to students. It's a student housing app, so think of it as like the Airbnb, I guess, of student living. In the UK, I guess our B2B audience is letting agents as well. We connect them directly with students. And in the US, it's not only letting agents, but also colleges. So we partner with colleges out there to make sure that they're a safe kind of housing solution for students.
Yeah, nice. Very good overlap with all the time you spent at Unidays, kind of similar demographic. I think in terms of the topic today, so understanding the next generation of consumers, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I guess just to talk definitions, I did some research before the pod. So millennials seem to fit into that. The numbers jump around a little bit depending on whichever study or definition, but millennials born 1981 to 1996 is kind of widely regarded as. I'm happy that I just fit into that by 1 year, so I'm taking that to the bank. Gen Z, which I think will be the focus, I think, of today's conversation. So kind of born in the mid to late 90s to around 2010. So that's people that today are kind of mid-teens through to mid to late 20s, I guess, is kind of how it falls. And then Gen Alpha, which maybe we touch on, maybe we don't, is a kids born 20, depending on the definition, 2010, 2012 onwards. So I'm the proud father of one Gen Alpha, but three Gen Alphas. One just fits in, and it was interesting, kind of some of the common traits. But I think it'd be interesting, Katy, for you what do you does that kind of stack up with, I guess, what you look at, and I guess some of those traits of those generations?
Definitely, yeah. I think obviously Gen Alpha being the emerging generation now, what we do know about them is they are growing up into a fully digital lifestyle, I guess. The way they'll interact with AI and kind of immersive technologies, and the way they will experience online life, that's going to be, they know no different.
Yeah.
Gen Z could say the same. They obviously are completely digital native. They're also the first generation. They're actually the most diverse and the largest demographic in history. And they, as well as being digital native, I think they're the first the first sort of age group you could define as global citizens, I guess. There's this notion of global community, which has been unlocked by platforms such as TikTok and social discoverability, that means that communities can exist on a global scale rather than just being local. And I think that's really exciting, and it's it helps define them as a group.
So interesting, isn't it? I guess sorry, and when you say the largest, that's literally just the most population wise the biggest cohort.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They currently account for, I think, about a third of the world's population.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I think in terms of this conversation, like there's like a lot of the work. I mean, Rocket's reasonably split B2B, B2C, and I think it's easy, given like a lot of budgets, marketing decisions are set by people that aren't in this cohort, right? But it's starting to change. Like if you're looking at, I was going to say kids, they're not kids, right? But if you're looking at people that are kind of early in that Gen Z, like you're now moving into roles where you are managing a team and you're making decisions around budget, and it's kind of it's a different kettle of fish. Maybe even from a couple of years ago when we last spoke, with increasingly it's a disposable income in a personal capacity, but making more important decisions in a business one as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's an interesting shift as well, the approach to brand. I think it's a slightly different topic, but I think the way that these Gen Zs are now decision makers and shaping the way that brands present themselves, I think it's been a great shift. Obviously, we're seeing more personal brand come through in bigger brands. The use of social media, obviously, to tell stories about brands and people within it, and the rise of EGC, so employee generated content. I think that's heavily led by Gen Z because that's their native environment. And I think it's such an exciting shift from the traditional brand.
Because it's not like at one level, we like to debunk stereotypes and we like to, challenge assumptions and whatever else. But stereotypes do exist for a reason, right? And I think they're like I was reading up prior, and Gen Z, true mobile first generation, side hustle culture, diversity, inclusivity, individuality, mentally health aware, prefer TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, a low tolerance for BS, authenticity, and small sample size. But I look at my nieces and nephews. I look at younger staff in the office, and they are like these are kind of, I think, common traits and common trends, which I think are different to if we're looking at boomers or if we are looking at millennials. I think they're dialed up, and I think it's all there for a reason, right?
Yeah, I think these are really important traits that Gen Z bring to the workforce. I think the idea of authenticity and having an authentic brand voice is something that not only Gen Z, but all demographics are really respondent to. People like seeing the personalities behind these brands and the opportunity to have a bit more fun with it, demonstrate more like humor and behind the scenes, as I say, like ECG, employee generated content being on the rise. And that will just continue to increase as Gen Z fill out the workforce, and obviously Gen Alpha eventually come in as well.
And it does probably run contrary to our default position, right? I think it's always like, what if something goes wrong? We need to stick to the style guide, the brand playbook. Things have to be more buttoned down, conservative. Because I think we come from this generation where just one generation prior, things were just so one-sided, and the brands had all the power, and we don't make mistakes. And it is letting up the reins out of that is so challenging, I think, for a lot of our clients, right? Where it's like, well, if you want to be on TikTok, you're going to have to let go of all those safeguards, and you're going to have to engage on their terms, not yours, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like, especially to make content feel authentic, you have to, as you say, you have to let go and you have to relinquish that control to some extent if you're willing to do so as a brand. I guess some brands just won't go there. I can't name many actually from experience. Like a lot of people are willing to demonstrate that flex and give it a go. My own social media team, I trust them implicitly. They all fall within that demographic, and I know they know what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to say. And especially with social media, that's absolutely a platform to be taking those risks or doing something.
And how do you? I think it's nice because I do want to talk to kind of get into social, right? Like, what are the differences, and how do you work with your team to kind of manage social? What are those things you're focusing on? Attention span, length of video, different channels you're playing in, like, because you do have so much experience. Because prior to uni days, you worked in an agency that worked in this space as well, right? Your whole career has been in this kind of cohort. Like, what are those things that you do see working?
Yeah, I think in terms of what we see working, trending and kind of viral content is always going to be a winner. And again, that's not just for Gen Z. That's, I think, anyone in the social space. Being quick to respond to viral trends is really important. Trending keywords and terms as well, and making sure you're considering that in the content you're putting out. We do a lot of short form video. So just kind of quick bite-sized chunks of information or entertainment that works well for us.
Yeah.
We don't, that being said, obviously that's a great format for TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. We don't at the moment play a lot with longer form YouTube content, but that absolutely is an opportunity. And we know that. I think there was a lot of conversation around short form video versus long form video. I think there's absolutely a place for both, and especially if you're talking to a certain interest group or community, both are equally as important. But personally, at the moment, we're a lot more adapting to short form and jumping on trends, things like that. Just to make sure the volume of content we're getting out is high as well, because that's another thing, making sure we're constantly present on social.
So and that's all been done in-house, right? Just to ensure you can get that volume of creative out.
Yeah, and we do a lot of it in-house, and we have sort of a network of brand ambassadors that are all students across the country and in the US as well. We loosely brief them. Sometimes we give more explicit briefs, but we use a lot of UGC as well, because I think peer-to-peer content when you're trying to relay a message is really impactful. So we do that a lot as well.
Yeah. What we're increasingly doing a lot as well, particularly when we're playing with TikTok, etc. in the agency. Like what advice would you have for listeners around UGC and how to engage when you're working with creators and influencers and setting yourself up for success there, because it is the Wild West, right, to some extent?
Yeah, I guess advice-wise, selecting the creator or influencer based on their audience and the content they put out, and not having a brief that is too restrictive or would result in them creating content that felt inauthentic to what they do.
Yeah.
Because I think Gen Z and millennials as well, everyone on socials used to seeing ads sort of immersed in the social space with the rise of social commerce. But I think as long as you're partnering with influencers and creators in a way that leverages what they're already doing well, they have their community, and that's what brands want to tap into. So trust them. As long as the brief is explicit and you sort of set out any guidelines of what you absolutely wouldn't want to be said or done or whatever. And that's why research is so important, understanding who you want to work with and what they stand for and what the benefits would be, because I think it's so clear when something feels manufactured as a result of the brand being too prescriptive of what has to be done. So I think that creative freedom is really important.
I think it's great advice. It was a really, I'm going to bring it up because it was such a great line. It came from a Fast Company survey, and I think I think it's like a misnomer around Gen Z, and it's all around that short attention span, and like all these numbers, they can only focus on something for 8 seconds. And it was basically saying Gen Z allegedly has the attention span of about 8 seconds compared to 12 seconds for millennials. This is not true. Gen Zs possess a sophisticated 8-second filter derived from growing up with massive amounts of information. This is a BS filter, and it's just so true. It's not that there isn't the capacity to focus or concentrate. It's that that BS filter, that guardrail is up so high that they smell it, they know what's authentic and they know what's inauthentic, and they just move on. And which is the whole TikTok thing, right? If you choose to engage, they will smell you coming in with an ad. If there is someone that they trust, an influencer or a content creator, and you try to kind of strong arm them into, your tone of voice or your style guide or your brand values or whatever it might be, it's just not going to work, right? You have to trust the process if you want to engage at all.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I love that line and I completely agree with it. I think the 8-second filter is way more fitting. We know that Gen Z have a much longer attention span for content they want to absorb, hence streamers and YouTubers, vloggers, everything like that. That's so popular because it's entertainment that Gen Z are willing to spend time on. But I think, as you say, that the first few seconds of a piece of content that is sponsored or has an ad within it
has to really hit the mark.
Absolutely, yeah.
What little practical hacks you have, I guess, in terms of trying to get that attention and that hook and trying to bring someone in?
So in terms of advice for creating content and making sure that you're getting the message across early on and not getting swiped past, I think making sure that the content looks native to the platform is really important. Is what I was about to say, making sure the opening frame looks really polished and has a glimpse into what you're trying to say. But I actually don't even think it's that important. I think something that feels native or feels like it could have been filmed by a friend, or there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's potentially, I don't want to say it's more impactful, but I think it feels at home in the platform. So I'd say think about what consumers that you're trying to talk to are already going to be looking at, and what especially with algorithms, what is going to be in their feed.
Yeah. I remember you talking last time just around when you're building out your teams, you're trying to build out team members that often are from that generation, right? Because there is just this, and I think that is, I think if you're a marketer that isn't on TikTok, isn't on Shorts, and is kind of like taking video assets from existing libraries and whatever else and trying to transpose them into TikTok, it's like you're setting yourself, it's not even setting yourself up not to work. You're going to do real brand damage, I think, with a cohort of users that are going, this is just ridiculous. So I think actually having that kind of that native understanding of the platform is so critical.
Yep, and I still hire in that way. My whole team actually are Gen Z, and I absolutely love that. I think as long as I can understand where, I don't give them completely free rein to go off and I have no visibility of what's going on, but I think when I understand the ecosystem, what's going on, what they're seeing, different names of influencers and creators, and why certain things are important, or why we need to do something within 12 hours or 24 hours, I listen to them because they know a lot better than I do. And I think that's where it's going to be more impactful, because they understand that platform better than I do. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? It was interesting. There's an eMarketer study that I came across. It's last year's, but I suspect probably data hasn't moved around that much. And kind of tapping into what you said before, it looks at the usage of Gen Z in America against a whole range of different channels and platforms, and then against the whole adult population. And it's streaming music is the biggest over-indexation. 28% of American adults stream music online. Gen Z, 43%. The second one, which I think you're right, where watching video streaming services online is the second biggest over-indexation. So it's not that there isn't a capacity to watch long-form video. It's just it's got to be right. And you see the numbers in different studies. I've seen the YouTube usage is completely insane, right? Yeah. And then you kind of look at watch traditional TV, it's under indexes massively, as you'd expect. Listen to AM, FM radio, under indexes, over indexes on podcasts, over indexes on audiobooks, over indexes on live audio services. Like, I think a lot of those stereotypes that we kind of went through at the beginning, that they're factually backed up, right? And there is a difference of tech usage. And then it was something else I thought was interesting, and I don't want to kind of regurgitate stats at you, but Gen Zs are not necessarily using social media more than their older counterparts. More than 75% of respondents in all age groups say they use and check social media sites at least 10 minutes a day. And then baby boomers in 8 of the 26 countries surveyed report spending more time on social media as Gen Z, which I think is a really fascinating insight. And so I think it is more, what social media platforms are they accessing, which the numbers, TikTok is just through the roof, short Instagram, etc., compared to channels like Facebook, right, where they do kind of under index.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really interesting stat. I do think as well, obviously we know that social media is a daily usage point for them, but I think conversations around mental health and wellness and terms like digital detox, they exist for a reason now. So I think Gen Z are very much attuned to that, and that could be right. I don't know, but I wonder if that's responsible as well for perhaps the decline. But
But I
yeah,
think,
that's interesting.
but I think it's true. And I was reading an article recently, and it was on that point, right? Which is that because it kind of goes both ways, and because it is that the first generation that has essentially had uninterrupted technology in their lives from when they were 8 or 10 or 12, and social media has been almost ubiquitous across that generation, there is starting to become this almost kind of control and blowback and an awareness that there is a downside. I think the struggles that we all have is
Definitely.
millennials, it's boomers. It's not. I think it's an easy characterization. I think to point at Gen Z and Gen Alpha and talk about that kind of complete addiction to social, and I think it's not necessarily borne out in the numbers.
No, completely agree.
So, what are you finding with TikTok? Because I suspect it's probably similar in the UK as to probably what I guess when you left Australia, it probably was quite different to what it is now. But just kind of complete growth. I think TikTok will tick past the 10 million user mark in Australia this year out of a population of 25 million. Under 30s obviously grew very quickly. We haven't got recent data, but I believe that the last numbers I looked at, the fastest growing cohort was actually over 25, I think, because there was already such saturation in the younger cohort. What's it like in the UK? Is it booming? Is it the platform to play in this space?
Absolutely, I'd say so. I think we do a lot of testing across Instagram and TikTok with similar content, sometimes the same content, and the reach and the way that the algorithm works on TikTok seems to be, well, it works a lot better for us anyway in terms of getting content out there. The way that it prioritizes content that is gaining momentum and puts it in front of new users. I think, absolutely, it's in my eyes at the moment still the number one platform that we're focusing efforts on socially.
And do you find working both from the paid and organic side, or kind of more effort into one? Yeah.
Both. Yeah, both.
Yeah. And then what about Facebook? Did you do any activity still in Facebook, or just not relevant for?
We don't at the moment. That's a lie. In the US, we do to target parents of students. So we do play a little bit there then with Facebook communities, but in terms of trying to speak to Gen Z, we don't.
And then I guess in terms of more traditional formats, like what are these dinosaur things that that you're finding still working? Because I think the reality is that as we've said before, these are generalizations, right? And there's this generalization that younger people skew more into TikTok. Doesn't mean they're not using Google. It doesn't mean they're not using more traditional advertising marketing channels as well. So like, what are you finding in terms of some of those things that still continue to work effectively?
Yeah, I think my team will be sick and tired of me saying it, but an omni-channel marketing strategy that touches various points of a consumer journey throughout the day, whether that's as they're walking to, in the student space, walking to uni, on their commute, on their phone, they're out with friends at a coffee shop, whatever they're doing, it's important to be as visible as possible in as many places as possible. So we absolutely still tap into traditional media, such as out of home. A big thing that we do at Housr is engage with students directly in the community. So real life engagement and marketing, face-to-face marketing. But I will always love digital out of home media, I think, as just a reminder. Obviously, we know that it's not going to, we can't easily attribute, the impact of any actions taken on the back of them viewing out of home. But I think as part of the marketing mix, is always going to have a place, and it's super important. And we know that I don't know the exact stat, but I think 80% of Gen Z say that they notice an out of home advertisement. So I think, definitely a place for it.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well, right? I think we're talking off air, and what is old becomes new again, and it's definitely, I think that the fragmentation of digital over the last 15 years, where it used to be Google to search and Facebook to push out social advertising, probably hence this conversation, right? The landscape is so much more nuanced now, and we haven't actually touched on it, but this cohort, this generation, I don't totally believe the study. There's a study that one of our team members shared recently, and I was saying that if you added up search queries that start in TikTok plus Instagram for under 25s, drives more commercial outcome than people turning to Google to kind of do
Wow.
that kind of thing. And even if it's not totally bang on at the moment, I'd like to see more data on it. We're seeing this cohort where their search pattern is TikTok, and it is we talk a lot about social search in the agency. We're trying to get our clients to go audience first, right? Where is your audience? And it's marketing 101, right? But then let's get the right message in front of them. And increasingly that does mean buying, for us, digital out of home, and did a tram wrap in Melbourne recently. And it's there's a definite rise of traditional mail, right? Direct response mail, because it's an underused channel, and there's effective ways to kind of get, depending on who your audience is. So it's no surprise, I guess. And you've got campuses, right? It's a logical place to base a lot of activity around. I mean, I guess in terms of like, what do you see in terms of trends, future trends for Gen Z, kind of in the near future?
I think obviously we've seen in recent years a big rise in social commerce. So I think, to your point about searching in social media, I think not only are younger consumers, discovering products and services within that ecosystem, they can now completely end-to-end purchase as well in that one platform. So I think in terms of a trend, social commerce will continue to rise. So the likes of TikTok Shop, YouTube shopping, Instagram shopping, that kind of thing, shoppable ads. I think the relationship between brands and consumers will continue to evolve. I think that the expectations Gen Z have, for like what they expect from brands, will help define the relationship moving forward. So I think in terms of that two-way communication, the consumers having more of a voice. Often, actually, I think the consumers informing who brands are partnering with and who they're affiliated with, because I think brands are now a lot more receptive to interest groups and listening to their communities. So I think that's a trend that will continue to develop. So we'll see more of like a bottom-up approach to influence rather than the traditional top-down approach. That's a really interesting one, and something we're seeing a lot more.
It was I might just paraphrase it, because I think it was an interesting takeaway for those of you that are listening. It was from the McKinsey report, which was called "What is Gen Z?", which is a bit basic of a title, but we'll run with it. And it was Gen Zs often choose brands that have a strong story or purpose, as well as those committed to green practices. In one McKinsey study, 73% of Gen Z reported trying to purchase from companies they consider ethical. 9 out of 10 believe that companies have a responsibility to address environmental and social issues, and they can tell when a brand is just paying lip service and isn't backing up diversity or sustainability claims with real change. And it probably does tie into that authenticity piece. I think we're probably talking more about it from a get your creative right, but I think even from a deeper brand purpose and what you're saying about your product or your people, I get that authenticity filter is there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that accountability that brands have now, that I don't know about you, but I think growing up, I never thought of brands in that way. It was never a two-way communication where there could be feedback provided or expectations set for a brand.
Yeah.
But I think spotlight's definitely been shone back on those, brands in positions of power to set the tone and to set a good precedent for future generations. And I think it's great. I love the movement. So
that's it. The internet, it feels that the internet started that, in a sense that I always kind of talk about, 30 years ago, if you wanted to buy a car, you kind of go into the car dealership, and it was a salesman most of the time, had the control, had the power, had the, all the leaflet and the brochures and whatever else, the Google path to purchase stuff in auto showed, I think it's 900 touch points digitally from when someone starts researching online to when they actually go into a dealership. And that was, that flipping of consumer power. Consumers started to have power around reviews and review websites and whatever else. And that's kind of been true for 10, 15 years. But I think now, if we look at, I think I like how you described it, is that two-way relationship now between a cohort of users that have grown up intuitively being able to message brands and connect with them socially, and it is this dynamic. And we've seen it in America with a lot of those social movements, right? For better or worse, brands kind of have to take a position, and if you don't, and consumers are too smart for you to kind of pull the wool over their eyes and pretend, sit on the fence, or to pretend you're doing something when you're not. You kind of end up being the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to mention something on a point you just made around going back and forth with consumers and being, accountable to that conversation with them. I think that's another trend that will continue to develop, how accessible a brand is and how quick you are to respond, not only in terms of like the bigger issues, but also just general customer service. I think Gen Z, and in general, I guess, people expect a more instantaneous gratification, whether that's, customer support, delivery, whatever it is. I think brands are going to have to keep evolving to make sure they can cater for those needs in terms of not only communication, but that real-time delivery of things, I think, is really ramping up.
It's just so true, isn't it? I think, like, I just look at my children and just the world they live in terms of, we want X and it just gets delivered from Uber in 20 minutes, and you buy something from a retailer and it's plugged into Uber and it's delivered to your house in 90 minutes, and there is just this expectation that we get things when we want them, and brands are contactable and should respond out of business hours, and it's fascinating stuff. Katy, it's been an awesome chat. I feel that anyone who where an important part of your marketing is to a younger audience that would listen to this would understand there are differences, would understand there are similarities. I think would kind of take away very practical things to market back into that group. I always finish the pod with, what's that one bit of career advice or advice you'd give to an in-house marketer? What is that? I'm not going to compare and contrast it to what you said last time. It's a free hit.
I was just thinking that, and I feel like it's going to be very similar, but I think, well, you already mentioned it, and it is marketing 101. It's listening to your audience and understanding, going to where they are, not trying to play in a space and assume they will come. I think find out where they are, find out who they're listening to, what kind of content they're absorbing, what's going on, and work out how you can authentically, or as authentically as you can, integrate yourself into that experience. And if you're willing to be slightly flexible with your brand to accommodate that, then even better.
Great advice. I could not agree more. Katy, thanks for coming back onto the podcast.
Thanks so much, James. It's been a pleasure.